Okay, hi brothers and sisters. We're going to take a look at something here that I find quite fascinating. The only way we're going to get to the bottom of the truth is to continue our studies. And I'll pop off these quick little videos that might enlighten some people who's interested. So Hosea chapter 7, we'll begin in verse 8. It says, Ephraim mixes with the nations. Ephraim is an unturned cake. Well, what's the allegory of an unturned cake? We'll take a quick look at that. What it comes to my mind anyway, I'll share with you. Verse 9, foreigners consume it, says his strength. Well, she is the strength of the body, so you could say his strength because she is his strength, but then it's she, so it's her strength. But he does not notice, she does not notice, even her hair is streaked with gray, but she does not know. So we'll look at what that means, possibly. 10. Israel's arrogance testifies against them, yet they do not return to the Lord their God. Despite all this, they do not seek him? Oh no, it's a her that they can't be bothered with seeking. And we can prove that right in these words here. So if we just look up one word in particular, gray, foreigners sap her strength, but she does not realize it. Her hair is sprinkled with gray, but she does not notice. So we'll hit on the interlinear, and we'll hit on the word gray hairs. This is interesting because this come up in another passage I had looked at. And it's 7872. Seba is the word it gives. Horary, head, old age, noun, feminine. So we're kind of looking at the feminine going on here, in a sense. That's what this is saying. So old age, gray hairs. That was of interest to me because it come immediately to my mind from a study I had done. So we'll move here first. So it says, Ephraim mixes with the nations. Ephraim is an unturned cake. Foreigners consume his strength in the sense that it's her that is the power of the body. Now, when the men of Israel rejected a covenant with the righteous daughters of Israel, they in effect rejected their very own scepter in the way that the rule was to go forth, which was through the righteous daughters of Israel, known as the presence of God on earth, known as God. That's why the name for Israel is Sarah El. God wrestles. She is wrestling with the harlot spirit that the sons of Israel took into their heart and began to marry foreign wives who were of the spirit of Babylon that would bow to Baal, them as Lord and God, Baal, the idol. So here we get this in connection to this passage in Psalm 106, and we'll begin at 24. Yea, they despise the pleasant land. The pleasant land is allegorical to the daughters of Israel. They are considered the pleasant land. And we see them dividing the pleasant land into two covenants when they rejected the daughters of Israel, which again is an allegory to the admixture of doctrine of the admixed wine on the table. We see Moses having to part the water. The only way Moses could part the water was through the real power, the real scepter, which was done through these daughters who was actually doing it, though you do not see their footprints as they take the children through in the birthing process. So here she says, my steps were not seen because the waters of the Red Sea covered them after they birthed the children through. So, but they despised the pleasant land, you see, and they believed not her word, but murmured in their tents and hearkened not unto the voice of the Lord. That's the daughter of Israel's, that's mother, 3068's number 1. So it's showing you that they were Lord God themselves. So we've kind of looked at that, I swear by myself that I live forever, which is identifying the original mother who was here on earth with us through these daughters of Israel, who you were to receive the law at their mouth. But when Balaam sends these women in to contaminate their seed, the plague breaks in upon them. And when that happens, God then determines to cast the real scepter, the daughters of Israel, out into the lands of the Gentiles. And we see the fulfilling of that covenant being promised in Isaiah 49. So therefore she lifted up her hand against them to overthrow them in the wilderness. So she overthrew their seed and also among the nations, and to scatter them in the lands. So here we see, going back here, Ephraim mixes with the nations, which were the heathen nations. And Ephraim is an unturned cake. But we see the rejecting of them was to reconcile all the nations back to the daughters of Israel, which we find referenced in Romans 11. So we see it was to reconcile all nations back to her covenant was the purpose of all of this when you begin to piece it all together. They joined themselves also unto Baal Peor. So this was the men who were doing it, and over time we see the righteous daughters forgetting who they were. And with all the lies and all the violence that got perpetuated against them, their covenant gets torn down, it gets totally forgotten, and they begin to bow to the image of a man as bridegroom, Lord, and God, which is really Baal. That's what we understand. And they ate the sacrifices of the dead. Thus they provoked her to anger with their inventions. So it was imaginations of their wicked heart of Baal, Balaam, Balak. It all goes back to this contamination. Thus they provoked her to anger with their inventions, with their imaginations, and the plague break in upon them. What was the plague? It was about the contamination of the woman's seed, known as the daughters in Israel, who taught Mother God's law off of her tongue, and they were known as God standing on earth. Then we see in Revelation 10 the angel, the mighty angel, which is the daughter made in her image, swearing by she who lives forever. It's not he, it's she, it's our mother, who runs like a vine in our blood. It's not our father, it's our mother. And it's always been our mother. They just, she says, but you didn't see my footprints. And she said, I did it because I wanted to show you what your final end would be. And I've shown you that. So what does this mean, do you suppose? Ephraim mixes with the nations, and Ephraim is an unturned cake. Well, if we look at it, when you leave a cake on the coals, right, they're burning, aren't they? It's going to burn. So it becomes blackened, right, in the heat. Number one, that takes us back to the Shulamite who says, look not upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. Look not upon me because the sun has looked upon me. That's the false light turning her black. And she says, because my mother's sons were angry with me, they made me the keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard have I not kept. So what happens is she's not turned. She's going black because she's still in the embers. And what does it say to the Shulamite? Return, return, O Shulamite. What might they see when the Shulamite returns? As it were, the company of two armies. That's the camp of Mahanaim. That's the presence of God standing on earth in the beginning. And we took a look at that. So that's what that's saying. Ephraim mixes with the nations. And she, because Ephraim is identified as the daughter who is the actual firstborn of Mother God's womb, but it's just she is an unturned cake. She becomes black. Because she's not turning back to her mother. She's not returning back. Is the allegory there. And it says, foreigners consume her strength. They're draining us dry. But she does not notice. Even her hair is streaked with gray, but she does not know. So what does that all entail, having your hair streaked with gray? So when we began in this covenant, she begins out as a child, really. An innocent child in this covenant. And she falls for the lies of her husband. But she says, you've been out amongst them long enough. And they're even draining your strength from you, removing your power from you, taking your power from you, building themselves up with thick clay. And you've in the meantime grown old enough to be wise enough to understand what the truth ought to be in the earth and what it ought to look like, and this isn't it. But you haven't got time to notice that. You ain't got time to be bothered with the truth, to listen to wisdom when she calls. But she says, in the meantime, you've grown up from a little girl that you were to a grown woman, and you don't even notice that you ought to have some wisdom enough to understand the truth when you hear it, when you see it. You're still thinking like a little child. You're still thinking like a little girl. That's why it takes us to Song of Songs chapter 8, where it says, when she be spoken for. And you're spoken for when you grow up, when you are transformed by the renewing of your mind, and you stop behaving like a child that is waiting for a little pat on your head by laying your back flat so that they may walk upon it. Because you've been taught that from the time you were a child. You are old enough now to pick up your head and understand a little bit what it means to be wise and to reason simple truths out. So that's what it's saying here. Foreigners consume your strength. But she does not notice. She don't pay attention to the truth. Even her hair is streaked with gray, but she does not know it. Israel's arrogance testifies against them, yet they do not return to the Lord their God. Despite all this, they do not seek her. So, you know what this led me to? I'm trying to remember everything. This word gray led me to Isaiah 46. That's where it led me to. Because this is definitely she. Because number one, Father don't carry you in his womb. They can change out that she pronoun for a he pronoun. That's what, wisdom. It shouldn't even be wisdom, it should be common sense, but apparently we've come to the point. We're old enough to understand what this ought to be entailing, and yet you deny it, and you get about bowing to a religious idol and thinking you're a good girl for doing it, a little pat on your head for bowing to man as if he's Lord and God and listening to his lies off the pulpit and playing his harlot. That's what that's akin to. But what does it say in Isaiah 46? It says, Baal boweth down, Nebu stoopeth, their idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavy loaden. They are a burden to the weary beast. Now, if we look up weary beasts here, you're going to get a feminine. Your beast, the power of the body, is also identified as a feminine to some degree, such as when you get the power of the Shulamite identified as a mare in Pharaoh's army. So she's a strong one to pull you through when she is moving in the powerful manner that she should. But here, she's got a load that she's carrying. It becomes a burden upon her to carry. But here it says Baal, that's another name for Baal, boweth down. Nebu stoopeth, their idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavy laden. They are a burden to the weary beast. So they have become a burden unto us, a heavy burden. They stoop down, they bow down together. They could not deliver the burden, but themselves are gone into captivity. So here we get a link here to many different ideas. One, the men are standing around like they're a woman in travail, as if they're a woman in travail, with their hands on their hips. And all faces are turned pale. In Jeremiah, I think it's 30, verse 6 or 31. I think it's 30, verse 6. Why now do I see every man standing around with his hands on his hips as if he is a woman in travail, and every face turned pale? Because they are trying to say that the one who gives life, creates life, and births it is a male, is a father. And so we see them going into captivity themselves. We also see the women themselves gone into captivity as they start to bow to this idol as well as Baal. It's truly Baal, your husband, Lord and Master, who is said to be made in the image of Father, who is the greater Master of all and who will create life and deliver life and all that jazz, which is absolute lies out of Baal's mouth, because they began to prophesy the imaginations and what they wanted to, and they knew that that was going to empower them on earth, as they taught their younger sister, who is really considered the firstborn of the womb, as the last thing created. She is the firstborn, and they were to hearken to the spirit of her covenant. And but somewhere along the way, violence come into the covenant, and the real lies and the real gnashing upon her covenant and the spirit of her covenant to remove it out of the land and to create what they wanted to build in the land, which was a lie in a law that empowered them. And so, hearken unto me, O house of Israel, and all the remnant of Israel, which are born by me, carried by me from the belly, which are carried from the womb. We're getting all of her there. No, we're not. Guess who they're going to tell us it is? It's a father. That's what they're going to tell us it is. You don't believe me? Read the next verse. And even to your old age, I am he. Yeah. Are you so without wisdom that your hair has gone gray and you can't reason a simple truth out? You can't, huh? Well, she says, when wisdom called and you couldn't respond to me with any logic, though your hair has gone gray, you've grown up, you've gotten old enough, you ought to understand simple reasoning. I ain't talking to you like, something that don't make sense. I'm reasoning it out and you're still not listening to me. You are as an unturned cake. You are going to burn in the coals of fire. That's what you're going to do. So it says, hearken unto me, O house of Israel, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, which are carried by me from my belly, from my womb. Oh, but you know what? The first thought on your brain is, well, that's Father. Yeah. You are without excuse not to understand the Godhead. I manifested it in what I created. And your eyes bear witness to it every day. And yet, because the men of Baal stuck a he pronoun in here, you believe it's talking about Father. No mother required. And even to what? What does it say? Your old age. What did it say back here? Even to your old age, you have been the one that have travailed. You have brought forth children. You have continued to carry the burden upon you, is what you have done. And you are old enough to understand simple truth and reasoning and wisdom. And yet when she calls, you can't reason out a simple truth here that he pronoun was stuck in there by the men of Baal to empower themselves on this earth to yoke you under a religious law and law. You can't figure that out, huh? Well, that's okay. She says, you may mock and scorn me, but she said, I will mock and scorn you in the day of your calamity. And if it isn't here, or very nearly here, yeah. But you don't want to listen to any sense and reason. And even to my old age, I am not he, she. And even to my hoar hairs, to my old hairs, to my old age, will I carry you. I have made, and I will bear, even I will carry, and even I will deliver you. But that's Father, right? Yeah, that's Father. Does that reason out in your tiny little brains? Aren't you supposed to be mature enough and wise enough to reason this simple truth out that they stuck he in there? A man don't have a womb. Why now do I see every man standing around with his hands on his hips as a woman in travail and every face turned pale? Go look at the commentary on every face turned pale. It means they're bearing witness to everything crumbling. And you know what I think? I think it's that idol of Baal, man, Jesus, crumbling. And they're all coming out now, all the billionaires, all the millionaires, all the TV stars. Oh, they all believe in Jesus now. Why do you think that is? Reason it out again, but you don't want to. So she says, that's fine. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to make sense. Fools love foolishness. But you remember this. When my firstborn comes of me, that's my rod of iron. That's right. And I'm going to mock you in the day of your calamity. When you continue to wait to be delivered by your idols, which have been nothing more than a burden on your neck. That's right. Just remember, I'm going to mock you in the day of your calamity while you wait for a man to deliver you out of his womb. You're going to be waiting for ever. Forever and ever. I am she. I'm the one that bore the burden. I'm the one that forms you in my womb. I am the one that has carried you. I am the one that has bled and travailed to bring forth life on this planet. And you still bow and you give all of that glory unto an idol on the cross is what you do. and you do not turn to the one that you forsook and you denied. She says, you forgot the rock that gave life to you and writhed in pain to bring you forth. Oh, but that's a man. That's father. That's daddy. No female required. She says, I'll turn my face from you. You won't even know I'm here. And you're going to realize what your latter end's going to be, and that's going to be death without me. To whom will ye liken me and make me equal? Well, that's Baal. Yeah, he can give life. He can birth the children. He can form them. He can carry them. That's right. So on to this final part, which really clicked for me, and we'll be done. And what does it say in Isaiah 22? Where we discover what the key of David is. This is one of the key passages that we use in unlocking what the key of David is, which is Isaiah 22. It helped with so many other things and still is helping me. I've discovered the identity of the daughter of Israel and her name. I believe it's a real weird name. Anyway, we won't get into that. I probably won't share it because there's just too many other things to share. 24. We get the burden here again, but it is not on the one that you think it is on just because they changed out all the female pronouns and names for males and he's so they could build up their image of Baal as Lord and God. And 24. Isaiah 22:24. And they shall hang upon him? No, it was on the daughters, all the burden. That's what got hung on them. Tell Israel that she has bore the burden, the double, upon her head. Tell Israel her warfare is ended. She has borne the double. And that double is the burden of the deliverance of children in the earth. A continued burden, a continued travailing to bring forth life. Men don't do this, though they took credit for doing it, through the idea that a father is the creator of all things and gave life to a woman. An XY can't. If it's true that the tabernacle below reflects the one above, an XY cannot make an XX. There's just simply no way. And that's why we can trace our, know ye not, the vine which you come from, which was our mother. That's where we sprung from. Our mother, our father couldn't create us. Only our mother can do that. And so it says, and they shall hang upon her all the glory of her mother's house, the one they tore down out of existence, and tells you there's one tabernacle below. No, if the tabernacle below reflects the one above, then there's two. There's not one. My tabernacle is not the same as his. Mine is a direct reflection of the creator and life giver above. And as the last thing created, she reflects that. She reflects the glory. And so what gets hung on her, why she bears the double, is because she's bringing forth her children unto glory again, is the idea of the burden and bearing the double. Tell Israel that she has obtained that which she seeketh for, which we find again in Romans 11. What has Israel not obtained? It says what he seeketh for, it's her, because the word obtain eventually leads you out to the birthing of children, travailing and bringing forth children. That's not a man, that's a woman. And so when you go to Isaiah 40, we'll do this right quick before we take a closer look here. So Isaiah 40, where is it? Does it say? It says, comfort ye, my people, saith your God. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry unto her that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. You see, she's received double because she has carried the burden. That's also your Azazel goat bearing the burden upon her out in the land not inhabited, where she went and was mixed with the nations and was like an unturned cake. But eventually the Shulamite does so return back to her mother, in whose image she is reflecting in the Godhead, which is the glory over the kingdom and the spirit. So, and they shall hang upon her all the glory of her mother's house, the offsprings and the issues. So we get children here. Yeah. The burden is upon the daughters to deliver the children. It was never upon a man. God never required a blood sacrifice. They dripped that in our covenant of peace, which was identified as water. Then you get the allegory again of the Red Sea admixture of doctrine. She says, I've been forced to mingle my wine. Well, we can debate whether it was wine she's talking there. She's saying my water got contaminated with blood. My pure water of life got contaminated when they determined to reject the spirit of the original covenant found through the daughter of Israel. And her 10 Commandments was how it all began. And we get Deuteronomy 4, her covenant, identified as the 10 Commandments. So it says, and they shall hang upon her all the glory of her mother's house, the offspring, the children, and the issue, all the vessels of small quantity, from the vessels of cups, even to all the vessels of flagons. So that's a reference to all those that serves in the house of God, mother, I think, in the house in the forest of Lebanon. These are generally feminine. Jar is definitely a feminine holding water, the word, the law of God. And we get the women publishing the word of God in Psalm 68. We've looked at that many times. So this is the verse that's going to connect us to the burden. So in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that's our mother, shall the nail that is fastened in the sure place be removed, and the burden shall be cut down and fall, and the burden that was upon it shall be cut off, for the Lord hath spoken it. You see how it links us all back to the burden of the Lord that they were prophesying through. She says, I'm going to cut that burden off of you. I'm going to cut the yoke off of you. I'm going to, release you from this burden that they have placed upon you. Because, for what else can I do for the dear daughter of my people but to try their ways upon the earth? So they're either going to, in the end, hearken to the spirit of her covenant, the original covenant, or they're not. And that's the cutting away of the foreskin, because, I know it sounds funny, but he actually tried to grow another one, is the idea. And that was made with the harlot spirit. And that was why Abraham was instructed by Mother God that if you're going to be in covenant with me, with my daughters, my chosen daughters, Sarah was one of them. She represents one of the 2 women in allegory to the 2 covenants in Galatians 4, which is the mother of us all from above. So Sarah was one that she directly worked through as a scepter. And for Abraham to be in covenant with her, he had to agree to have the foreskin cut away and all the sons that was under his household. And what did he in turn do? He went and found himself another woman and brought her into the house and pretended that his intention was not to sleep with her. And Sarah said, let God judge between me and thee what was in your heart. And God took Sarah's side, showing you exactly what was in Abraham's heart, what his intent was. And it was so just what I said. So there we go. It's not too long, 28, 29 minutes. If I get a chance, I might make another quick video and put it up. I know these are helpful and beneficial just for me to go back in and watch from time to time, because you can't always retain everything that you've studied. So it's always beneficial to record and so that you yourself can go back in and regather your thoughts, which really helps to weave the entire idea of truth, the truth together is what we're attempting to do. And to break this web of lies, this weave of lies from these warlocks that think they're so clever and continually do it. And people help them by believing in the lies that they weave, by believing in the religious lie of Baal. God is no respecter of person. We were all to be equal under those laws, and to say that these laws that absolutely subjugate women came from God was a lie, was a religious lie, because they did so reject the original cornerstone, which were the righteous daughters of Israel, and the law of heaven was so found at their mouth, and their law came from their mother, and they met with Mother Spirit, Mother God from above in the house in the forest of Lebanon, and then they eventually get rid of it so that there truly is only one body standing, and that is identified as Baal, who is your Lord and Master, and who will write and yoke you under his religious lies and laws, because your habitation is no longer standing for you. And but we're discovering it. She's forgiving us, I think, to allow us daughters. Well, she's calling out. You know, she's crying in the high places, and she's calling out to any who will listen. And I think those that's gonna listen will be of the original covenant. In the beginning, I hear a familiar spirit, as of one who speaketh out of the dust of the earth. So she's definitely calling us back to her. And the few that's gonna listen, it's a very narrow path. Few be that find it, and it's not the millions and billions that they got. So many of the ones who are bowing to an idol as Lord and God, because their hair has turned gray. They have gotten older to the point where they should be able to understand a little bit of reasoning, a little bit of sense in reasoning, and seem to possess absolutely none. Their strength is gone. They have none. So there's the video. Thanks for watching. I pray you're blessed with an abundance of truth. And I hope you all have a really nice day. Thanks.